Okay. My name is Daniel Mancuso, and I'm running for Josephine County Position 2. I made the decision to run after 10 years of covering the Josephine County government. I've covered 11 individual county commissioners, and I've sat through so many candidate forums and listened to people talk about things that have nothing to do with the job of being a county commissioner. And I initially thought, well, I was going to run just to kind of control the narrative a little bit. Let's take it back to where people who are going to vote understand, or they're choosing someone based on what the actual job is. And then I thought, no, I'm going to run. And I've been threatening my wife for years that I was going to run, and this time I decided to do it. I live in the Illinois Valley. I fell in love with Josephine County the first time I laid eyes on her, and I feel very strongly. My wife and I both are very active in the Illinois Valley through youth, other community groups, CJ Homeless Alliance, Boys and Girls Club. I'm a past president of the Illinois Valley Chamber of Commerce. I do a lot for the area youth athletic teams as far as provide track suits for the high school track team, graphics for the junior high wrestling mats, football uniforms, you name it, volleyball uniforms for the middle school. I've raised a lot of money for that. I'm also a member of Eclampus Vitus. And what that is, it's a historical society where we focus on Western history, but it's a little more of a philanthropic where we actually raise money and donate it primarily to women and children, widows and orphans, because that's what the Clampers did back during the gold mining, the gold rush. So I co-created a scholarship for youth that aren't very good at school. And so you have to have a 2.5 GPA or less, and you can use, we get $4,000, and that is for trade school or a union, I want to say internship, but a union apprenticeship. So like I said, there's a lot of kids that don't have money. They don't get good enough grades to go to college or get scholarship money. And so that's my way of helping some of the underserved people in our community. My ideas as far as what I'd like to do as a county commissioner, the county has a pretty large budget, but very little of that is under the control of the county commissioners. Public safety and sheriff funding are obviously the two largest issues on most people's mind. And I also like to think that the homeless, mental health, drug and alcohol addiction kind of all feeds into that same bucket, although they're separate issues. The housing crisis that everybody talks about is a very big deal. And that's an area that I have some ideas on that I can get into later as well. Mental health services right now, we pay options $7 million a year. And I think the commissioners just said, oh, here, and then they wipe their hands of it. And I would like to negotiate a better deal that will help the residents in need by getting options to actually give street level services through drug and alcohol addiction, job training, mental health services. And I think that would help you're not going to eliminate the homeless problem overnight. It's just, you got to pick them off one at a time. And the other thing is broadband internet. If you want to help Josephine County grow, if you want to help all of the issues that we have, broadband internet to everyone, or as many people that's actually physically possible, that will actually go a long way to solving a lot of our problems. And lastly, the person I'm running against, when he decided to run, he used the idea that he said, I was a city councilor and there wasn't any communication between the county and the city. And so I ran to help fix that. And that tells me that he ran for Josephine County Commissioner to help the people of the city of Grants Pass and not all of the residents of Josephine County. And that's what I'd like to represent.
Great. Just for the folks who are here, we can take questions down at the bottom of your screen. If you highlight it, there's a little icon that says chat, and if you go into that chat room, you can write questions up, and we'll try to get them to Dan as they come in. We're in a bad place here. We've got the COVID thing shutting the whole county down pretty much. Sounds like a couple of places are talking about opening up. I don't know if that's how they're going about doing that. But have you had any idea about what kind of trouble we're going to be in financially later, the county, in terms of not getting in tax revenues from one kind or the other?
The county generates the lion's share of their income. Actually, that's not true. I was about to tell you a fib. The county gets $19 million a year from fees, which would be through building permits, handgun, registrations. They're the carry, conceal. Any permit that you pay the county for, it averages, last year, I believe, last fiscal year was over $19 million. Last fiscal year, actually in our current fiscal year, it's budgeted that we're going to bring in a little over $12 million in property tax. So I don't feel the property tax is going to take a hit, although your permits probably will. But to be honest with you, we live in a rural community, and it's either ag-based or service-based. And I don't anticipate
The mute, Linda.
I don't anticipate there to be a drastic drop in any of that, because when I look around, I see construction people working. I see the hemp and marijuana people out in their fields getting things ready for next year. I see the vineyards out pruning, getting ready. I have seen very little lag in most of our economy except for the restaurants. And since we don't have a sales tax, I don't see where Josephine County is going to have a real long-term negative impact from this, just given the state of the economy of Josephine County as it stands today.
So the county's going to do pretty well, but the city's going to take a whack, it sounds like, probably.
Well, I don't know that the city actually is, because again, if you look at where the city of Grants Pass and the city of Cape Junction get their revenue from, it's from property tax, it's from providing services like sewer and water. And again, I'm not a finance guy. I don't have a degree in economics, but just the way how I know Josephine County, I mean, I make my money off advertising, and I have to say I don't know of any of my advertisers that are closed. When I talk to the grocery stores, they're very busy. The restaurants obviously are taking a hit because they don't have sit-down eating, and alcohol sales is a big part of any restaurant's revenue stream. And so they're taking a bit of hit there. But again, the county and the city, they don't have a sales tax. So I'm not sure. I guess it would come from the revenue sharing from the state of from the state of Oregon for the alcohol, which from what I hear at the liquor stores are doing very well. Marijuana dispensaries are doing very well. I don't think it's this giant insurmountable thing that some people want to make this out to here in Josephine County.
Well, that sounds like some good news.
Well, I hope it is.
Oh, I was just checking our questions out there, but I don't think we have a question yet. Oh, well, we do have a question, I think, from Sherry here. It says, how are you going to approach the good old boy mentality, the Jefferson State Liberty Watch group?
Well, there's one thing I'm not, and I'm not a good old boy. I'm probably the largest threat to them because I feel that I'm very electable, and I don't. I lived in Wyoming for 5 years, so I was seeped in the good old boy mentality, and I buck that every chance I get. I think that I can work well with those people. I think that Darren Fowler obviously is one person I have to work with, and I feel that I can relate to Darren. I mean, I think Darren and I are only a year or two apart, We disagree on a lot of things, mostly climate change and climate change. But I think that it doesn't matter if you have, well, let's go back to, the United States used to work very well. The Democrats and Republicans would fight, but they would always agree. My father was a union arbitrator for the Meat Packers Union. And what he taught me was a good negotiation. Both sides always feel they left something on the table. So I feel that if we could go back to where we had Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, where they would argue and they would agree and they would come to a solution that everybody can accept. We don't have that in America anymore. I feel that because of how I was raised, that I can get along with people. I was a little farm kid in Northern Illinois when my dad dragged us to Washington, D.C. So I had to deal with people that I've never had to in my life and overnight. So I think in dealing with people from different backgrounds and different opinions, I think the good old boy mentality can be overcame with the right touch. And I believe I have that. As far as the Jefferson State thing, I didn't, like with Idaho, I didn't move to Idaho. I don't want to live in Idaho, or else I'd live there now. And I just think it's kind of a waste of, it's just hot air, it's noise.
I wonder if anybody asked Idaho if they wanted us over there.
Right.
Here's a question. It says, the climate crisis is settled. What are your ideas on making Grants Pass green with renewable energy?
Well, Josephine County currently has some electric buses. I think they're electric or propane. I'm pretty sure they're electric, that are being tested right now. And I think that as that goes forward, as long as you can show people that it works and it's cost effective, whether or not you believe that that humans are having an impact on our planet or not, you have to understand that if I can show you a cost savings by using green energy, even the largest climate deniers can't deny saving money. So I just think that using that tact, play small ball, little things here and there, show people, regardless of what their belief system, this is working, it's saving the county money, and those of us that actually care about our planet will be pretty happy too.
Yeah, the lower price in oil prices is not going to help us out there, is it?
That's a blip. It's not going to last.
Yeah, I think that the other day they said that the price of the barrel was worth more than the oil in it, or something like that.
Yeah. That's a blip. It's all manipulated. I'm not worried about it all. We'll get back to it's always been around $30-$35 a barrel until it went on that climb. It'll be back to probably $50-$75 a barrel sooner than later.
Yeah. And they say that solar, I believe, is cheaper than any kind of fossil fuel now per watt of it in a kilowatt.
They'll argue that.
Yeah. Let's see. If you received $1 million grant for use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
When you say the city, are we talking about the city of Grants Pass, city of Cave Junction, or Josephine County?
It just says the city. I imagine Grants Pass probably is what they're talking about.
I'm running for a position in the county, so I'll address that from a county standpoint.
Okay.
I would use that $1 million. If I get a $1 million grant, the grant usually comes with strings attached. But if someone were to drop $1 million in my lap, I would use that for matching funds to either put I mean, there's no reason why we don't have solar panels on every building with all the sunshine we have here in Southern Oregon. I would probably look to that first, but I would look at any way I can actually take that $1 million, turn it into $1.5 million or $2 million or more, and have a long-term lasting impact. And I may find that might be setting up some sort of mental health services, some sort of addiction service. I don't know. I'd have to see where it could be best used, but I would lean towards green energy or use it as a matching grant for broadband internet infrastructure. $1 million isn't a lot these days when you're looking at government.
Well, Dorothy will appreciate that broadband. She's out on the fringes of it here. Let's see. I'm having trouble reading here. There's another question says, it seems that a large percentage of our residents are not really following wearing masks and gloving up and doing full social distancing. Will you support encouraging the public to really follow those careful standards during this coronavirus period?
Well, one of my supporters was kind enough to give me this, which I try not to wear in public too often because it's got my face on it. Dan Mancuso 2020. I wear mine 95% of the time when I'm in public. I get out of my car. When I walk up to the store, I put my mask on. I have in the Illinois Valley News written columns. My wife Laura has written columns, articles. I am stunned at who I see wearing them and who I don't. I get like the 20-year-olds, they think they're invincible. But I see a lot of middle-aged to seniors not wearing them. And I don't know, but I think the county, through their emergency preparedness readiness plan, they really need to, while we all know the 1, 2, 3 go for fire, the county needs to educate us on what are we going to do the next time this happens, because it's going to happen again. What are we going to do when we have a pandemic? So I think it falls down to our the county's emergency management plan and proper education.
Last year or 2 years.
That's my thoughts. I don't know if I answered the question. People just, some people, they don't buy it. And, you know, you can't, what's it? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Well, I wonder if you could have some kind of a ticketing or something like that, if that was possible. Something I guess you could look at, but you know, I would argue that they don't have houses broken into and people getting beat up and nothing happens. So yeah. Let's see.
This
guy?
Past sheriff.
Brian Clark? No, he's the guy.
Oh, he's the guy.
Let's see. Here's a question. Says about housing. Says we need. Oops, sorry, if I can find it again. We need affordable housing in Josephine County. What are your ideas to help with the housing shortage?
Josephine County. Well, my initial response is let's ask the developers why they don't build here. It's cheaper to build in Josephine County than it is Jackson County. What we lack in Josephine County is an inventory of lots. There isn't a lot of land that developers can build on in the county. I also think that, well, we have a problem. I mean, there's 1,500 people who live in Jackson County and work in Josephine County. Why don't they live here? I think that there's a lot of answers to that. Some of it's our reputation, lack of law enforcement, the people not willing to help fund government. You really need to ask your developers about that. But the county needs to do some things. I know in other areas, the county or the other areas may say, you know, all right, we'll ease on this part of your development, but in exchange, we want you to build a park when you're done. Or there's trade-offs that the county, that any municipality can work with a developer to get them to build more houses. But we don't have, I spoke to a developer last weekend and he goes, we don't have a huge inventory of buildable lots. Everybody wants R5, but you can't build subdivisions or more condensed housing. And that was his complaint. And then as far as the city of Grants Pass and city of Cave Junction, that would fall to the city of Grants Pass and city of Cave Junction and not in the role of a county commissioner.
Boy,
I know in Cave Junction, they're building like crazy. They can't even, one builder can't even have a model home because as soon as the house is done, it's sold.
Wow. Yeah, there's been selling really fast around our house too. We're in an older neighborhood, but I mean, houses, nothing lasts more than a month. A lot of things. I think one neighbor said they listed it online and it was sold in 2 hours. Wow. So let's see. These questions are coming faster than I can see them. They're scrolling right through. Let's see. This has to do with fire protection.
Yeah.
Current commissioners are requiring a contract with an outside consultant to determine if a fire district is the best approach to provide fire protection services to all in the unprotected areas. What would you need to place a proposition on the next ballot for a fire district?
Well, first off, you need to have a desire. And our current county commissioners all live in the city of Grants Pass. They have a wonderful fire department. And so it's not really an interest to them or their friends because they all have the luxury of Grants Pass, the Department of Public Safety for that. So that is the first issue. You need someone who lives in the county. I live in the Illinois Valley Fire District. So if I wanted to put something on the ballot, in order for it to go on the ballot, you have to have all of your ducks in a row. How much money is the tax going to be? How exactly is it going to be spent? And I can't say how long that would take to dial that in. I think a consultant would help dial it in so that you could put it on a ballot. But I don't need a consultant to tell me that if a private corporation goes belly up, that every single person in Merlin or you know, Williams has their own, but anybody in Merlin or the North Valley area or Sunny Valley will have no fire protection. And to me, I think that's reckless. It's irresponsible. I think it's recallable myself. But I think that if we put forth the effort, it would take maybe a year. And I'm just throwing that number out there because I don't know. But if you have the desire to get something done, it's amazing how quickly you can get something done.
Great. Let's see.
But I would put it on the ballot without a doubt. I would get it done. 4 years from today, I don't want to sit here and tell you, well, you know, we've got good employees at the county and we're this way, these projects, and I want to see them through. I want to tell you 4 years ago today, I told you I was going to do these 5 things. This one I can't do. This one I did. That one's halfway done. This one will be done on the 13th. I want to be able to tell you that I did complete these things and not take credit because we have good employees.
Great. Let's see. This has to do with the budget. It says, what are or should be the budget priorities for the upcoming county budget? Is it realistic for the majority of county programs to be self-sustaining?
You know, no. A lot of county budgets, department budgets cannot be self-sustaining. They are going to, like Parks is one that is. I think that the Parks Department, Sarah does a fantastic job with what she has. I think she's been very creative at coming up with revenue streams. But, you know, building and safety, for them to be self-sufficient without a proper inventory of buildable lots, it's going to be very challenging for them to do that. But in theory, you cannot charge more for a permit or a fee than it actually costs to provide that service. I think that's actually the law. So that's why a lot of your, if you say, well, it takes Jane an hour and a half, and at $20 an hour, it's $30. So you can't charge more than a certain percentage of that for that permit. But as far as where our money needs to go, most of it's mandated. The state basically says this is what you're going to do in your general fund, which is where law enforcement comes from, and they do get the lion's share of that. And there are some luxury items.
Let's see. Question about city and county relations. Do you think the county should have input on city property sale or purchase decisions that involve county property? County should have input on.
Is the county property, is it the county's property
Let me read
in
that
the
one
city, or is it in the county? I mean, it's kind of a,
well, that's, I'm a little confused by the question there. I'll read it to you again. Do you think the county should have input on the city property sale or purchase decisions that involve county property?
well, of course, if it's county property, it would 100% fall down to the county commissioners, whether or not the county wants to sell that property or not. I mean, if it's ours, I'm assuming they're talking about surplus property, something that was acquired through a foreclosure or some sort of asset forfeiture, and the city. Yeah, it's not a real clear question, and I don't want to back myself into a corner.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Brian,
not
can I
sure.
help with that a little bit?
Sure. Who's that?
This is Jerry Allen.
Oh, hi,
Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Dan. I think that the question is stemming from the fact that the city of Grants Pass owned the River Road Reserve property, and they sold it to the fellow from Dutch Brothers, and the county, the property is in the county, not in the city, but the city owned it. And I believe this questioner is asking, do you think the county should have a say in that when you have a big piece of land that is county in the county, but the city owns it and they want to just do a sale on it?
I think that the county probably should have a say because there's a land use issue. If it's going to change, well, actually, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. Yeah, I think the county should have a say in it. And I think their say in that will come when the purchaser wants to change the land use of that property. And that's when a county would have a say in that. And I think it would be wise for the city and the purchaser and the county all to be having this conversation together. Because the county may come out and say, no, we're not going to allow that use, and this guy is ticked because he just paid X $1 million for property that is of no value to him. So, and I think Travis is smart enough where he probably has had conversations, and I don't think he's done anything inappropriate. But I have to wonder. Like I said, he's smarter than that. So my answer is yes, sort of.
I hope they can leave some land that's to grow crops on there, then they can put some of that horse manure to good work.
Yeah, and hopefully it doesn't, poison the water and everything else.
Let's see, this one has to do with the health department. The current commissioners attempted to privatize the health department. What is your vision of a functioning health department?
It's another question I kind of have two different opinions on. I don't like the fact. Do I think that options is better at managing our mental health than 3 county commissioners, and one's an electrician, one's a heat and air guy, and one will be a newspaper guy? And I don't have the expertise, and I think that going private could be better, more cost effective in the long run, but it all comes down to negotiations. And like I said, in my opinion, the county dumped this on options. I'm going to be very cautious here when I say this. I'm not against options. I just don't think they're all that. I don't think we're getting our $7 million worth. We have an options location here in Cave Junction, about 400 yards from my office, that's never open, that's never staffed. So I not in its current form.
Okay. Let's see. This is about the coronavirus. To better address the coronavirus that'll be with us for a while, another year probably, maybe. I think we need public health staff testing and contact tracing. How would the county get that addressed? Have a better contact tracing testing?
Yeah, the testing. I have 100% faith in Michael Weber and his staff. He's been very responsive to me, and I have to assume he's that way with everybody. I think there's a lot of gamesmanship that have been played through the county for this virus, or for this situation that we're in. Nobody's getting testing. I think fewer than 2% of the Americans have been tested. I don't think that it's a county issue. I think it's going to come down from the state, and then obviously through the federal government, funneled through the state. But I would have to say that while I believe that the state has done a great job in shutting things down as fast as they did, and at the time I thought it was ridiculous, but in hindsight, I think it was genius. But I think that the states are dealing with someone at the federal level who just doesn't seem to want to address the issue, that uses it as a political ploy. And I think it's out of my hands as a county commissioner. And I think it's sad, actually.
Hi there. I think this is Dorothy. I think I'm looking at my clock, and it's now 7:37. So
Okay.
perhaps we'll wrap up with Mr. Mancuso here.
Okay.
Well, you bring up 737, which is funny because the Illinois Valley Airport has a 5,000 foot runway that can land a 740 or 737 aircraft on it, and you can't land one in Grants Pass, but they're going to expand it so you can. What you're going to see with Dan Mancuso as county commissioner is I'm going to look out for all of the county. I'm going to look at where our money and time can be best spent to improve all of the citizens of Josephine County. I'm going to call BS when I see it. I'm going to work with everyone in a way and be, you can disagree and be agreeable at the same time. It's about being polite and courteous. And I think that if America in general got back to being courteous, we could get a lot done. Two of the guys have ran the last 4 or 5 times. The other guy's been in office for, I guess, combined for over 10 years. I have new ideas. I have a fresh perspective on things. I chose to move to Josephine County. I believe that everything is not black and white, and there's room for all ideas, whether or not you believe in the coronavirus hoax, or if you believe in the climate change hoax. I think that there is a way that we can get through all this that appeases everyone. No one's going to be totally happy, but no one's going to be completely ticked off like the way the world is today. I just think a friend of mine were arguing today on Facebook about critical thinking versus common sense. I think common sense goes a long way. I think common sense is years of critical thinking. And I'm not looking out for my buddies because I don't have any. I've lived here 10 years. I'm looking out for the citizens of Josephine County. And I really would appreciate all the support that your group has given me. And I hope that it continues. And I hope that if you guys do vote for me, I don't let you down. If you want more information, you can go to danman2020.com, or tomorrow night, if you go to elect Daniel Mancuso on Facebook, I'm going to have a town hall where all of you who didn't get your questions answered, it's my Zoom meeting and I can go all night. So if you didn't get your question answered, or if you want to dive a little deeper, you'll have that opportunity at 7 o'clock tomorrow on Zoom. Just go to my Facebook page.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan, for being here tonight, and thank you for running.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Dorothy?
I think next up is Jamie McLeod-Skinner.
Okay.
And I think what we're doing with, hello, Jamie.
Hey,
You're here, right? Yes.
I'm here. Yes.
If you want to kind of start out telling us, I think we all know who you are.
I recognize that background.
Give us a little bit of a spiel about why you're running and what you hope to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Thanks so much for your support. It's so nice to see some friendly faces again. Sorry, I can't, this can't be in person. And so I hope everyone is safe and well, and your families are safe and well as well. Thank you for your early support in this race. It's been a really powerful statement to be getting support from across the state in urban and rural areas. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, but let me actually just go back into my background, because some folks aren't as familiar or aren't as familiar with my background with regard to this role. I also want to talk a little bit about the Secretary of State role itself, just because I find that I'm giving a lot of mini civics lessons for folks, and then talk a little bit about what's kind of distinguishing my candidacy, and then also some of the support, and then I'd be happy to answer questions, and we can, this is actually my last event for the day, so we can go as long as you guys want to go. I'm good to go. So a little bit of my background. I actually was born in the Midwest, and then as a kid lived in East Africa for a while before moving to Southern Oregon. So I'm an Ashland High graduate. Used to actually compete against Grants Pass, the cavemen back in high school. I went off then to sorry, wow, it is my last event. Sorry, folks. I got my first degrees in engineering and civil engineering. I got my master's in regional planning. And then after, just when time I graduated, got my master's, the war in Bosnia was just ending. So I began my public service, used the privilege of my education to serve. I'd come out as a young adult, and so military service was not an option. So I managed the multi-million-dollar projects reconstructing schools and hospitals in Bosnia and Kosovo. When I wanted to come back to the States, the IRC asked me to run their refugee resettlement office in the Bay Area. So I get a lot of guff for having spent some time in the Bay Area, but there you have it. And so there I worked really closely with refugee and immigrant community individuals and community-based organizations, and things like organizational development, self-sufficiency, helping people, kind of reconnect to community, which is a big issue right now, actually, with COVID-19. Also help people go through the naturalization process, so become citizens and access their right to vote, which is another key part of the role. I've worked in organizational development with both nonprofits and government agencies. I actually was on the organizational effectiveness team for Sunnyvale, which is a city that actually is an award-winning, it's part of the book Reinventing Government, and talking about outcome-based management. So how do you get the best bang for the buck and really serve people's needs? Worked as a city planner there, and then also as an environmental planner for a regional water agency. Served concurrently on the Santa Clara City Council for 8 years, and so was on multiple committees, regional committees, chaired a bunch of regional committees, a lot around natural resource issues, but was also on the economic development, which again is a huge issue right now and is going to be post-COVID-19, rebuilding our economies. Also served in the audit committee, on the ethics committee. Ethics in government, is very important to me as well. So that was work I did there, and then when I wanted to come home, got a law degree from the U of O, focused on natural resource law, water law, Indian law. Clerked for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the water case down in Klamath, and then also worked in Southern Oregon, first on the 2016 campaign, and then in local government, served as a city manager before Cass and I moved to Central Oregon. 2017, 2018, you all know you were there. We actually had the biggest delta, the biggest change of any congressional race in the country, and you were a part of that, so thank you so much. It also, we helped to flip the House, which was really key. And it was all about, for me, it was all about accountable government, making sure that Washington was accountable. Now, the next stage is to replace the president, and then also love to see us flip the US Senate. For us, that means keeping Jeff there. But the focus now, shifting the focus to this aspect of accountable government, it was really what led me to focus on the Secretary of State's race. And then also having people just really encouraging me to say, hey, this is such a great match for your background and skills. It's so much what we need right now. Everything from helping to bridge the urban-rural divide. We've had walkouts the last 2 sessions. It's been essentially a national embarrassment because we've been getting articles about our inability to work together. That's not the Oregon way. So we really, and in rural Democrats, we know what that's like about, working together with neighbors who might have different politics, but we know how to do that. And that's something that I think we need more of right now in Salem. The other really big things, honestly, it's about protecting our democracy right now, really defending what we have and rebuilding it. So through elections, through the audit process, and our natural resources. Some of the things that distinguish my campaign is not having big money in politics. So in my 9 years of elected office experience, and I now actually serve as an elected member of the Jefferson County Education Service District Board. You all know that Cass and I live in Central Oregon. I was also appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate to the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, a statewide agency. So I actually serve you in that capacity now. But one of the key things for me is money in politics is really problematic because despite what folks say, we know that impacts their decision. We see it all the time. And so I have never in my 9 years of elected office experience taken corporate PAC money, not fossil fuel, not big pharma. So this is not just something I've come to just recently. I know there's some folks who just recently signed the no fossil fuel pledge. That's something that I've always just done because I believe in ethics in government. Another big thing is I'm the only one in my race who's never taken opioid manufacturer money. And that to me is stunning that that's actually a thing, but it's pretty common here in Oregon, which given the impact that opioids has had in our communities, it's unconscionable, but that's just me. Another thing that really distinguishes my candidacy, actually two other things. One is the LNG pipeline. I took a stance against it in 2018. It's going to have a devastating impact on our environment, on our communities, on our rivers and streams. Yes, jobs are important, but we can work together to build other jobs and build up our renewable energy resources and also sustainable harvesting of our natural resources. So that's, again, I'm the lone candidate in my race who's taken that public stance on LNG, and I'm very pleased that the Sierra Club recently endorsed me. All the youth climate organizations have endorsed because of my strong environmental stance of protecting our natural resources. And then my colleagues, I've got two respected colleagues who I'm running against. They both have gotten support from organizations and taken money from organizations who require support for the LNG pipeline. Another big thing I think is, and this is really a rural issue, is the closed primaries. So my colleagues are encouraging to open the primaries. I think that's problematic. It's obviously the party's decision, but I think a party should be able to choose its own nominees. And we saw this in my race in 2018, where it could have impacted races if we don't allow Democrats to essentially choose their own nominees. So I think that's an important issue. And again, it distinguishes in my candidacy. A little bit a couple of things also about some of the support I've gotten. So again, really appreciate your support. Also, actually, Curry County also came out and endorsed in the primary, which is really powerful. Again, that sends a rural Democrat saying we need a rural Democrat voice in Salem. Some great support really from legislators. So Alyssa Kinney-Geyer, who's a really progressive legislator from Portland. She's endorsed Senator Jeff Golden from Southern Oregon. So some great support there. Organizations like APANOS, the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon, RAICES, which is a Latinx organization in Eastern Oregon, progressive papers like the Ben Source, which is the progressive voice in Central Oregon, has endorsed me because they said they know my track record and they know this core commitment to values. So we've got a long list of endorsements. That's on my website at jamieforegon.com. But wanted to just then shift to real briefly talking a little bit about the Secretary of State job, because a lot of people don't realize how expansive and how important it is, all the different roles and aspects. So it's an executive management position. And this is another distinguishing factor. I'm the only one in the race with executive management experience. So I have both policy and executive management experience. And that distinction is important because policymaking is about big picture ideas, and executive management is actually implementing them and doing them. So it's talking versus doing, and this is a doing type job. So it's an executive management position, oversees over 200 employees and multiple divisions. So elections, audits, business registration, the corporations division, the state archives, transparency is really key there. The Secretary of State is one of the three on the state land boards. As I mentioned, the LNG, because it's the governor, Secretary of State, and state treasurer that serve on that board and will make some key decisions coming up. Serves as de facto lieutenant governor. Of course, Oregon does not have a lieutenant governor, but serves in that capacity if needs to step in. And then also is the backstop for redistricting. So since 1955, when the Secretary of State came the backstop, the Secretary of State has actually done redistricting, I think, 4 times. And so it's actually more often than not. The way redistricting works now, and this is the redrawing of our political boundaries, is it goes to the state legislature. But if they walk out yet again, and they have in the last 2 sessions, then it goes to the Secretary of State. And this is critically important for our elections and for making sure that Oregon does not go the way of Wisconsin under Scott Walker, making sure that we're drawing fair and boundaries that are fair to folks and not getting into the gerrymandering we've seen in other states. So that's part of that role as well. So that's the role. I've got experience in all aspects. I'm also actually a small business owner myself. I've got experience in all aspects of the role. When we've been in the transition to this new reality we're in for campaigning, we've been having several per week live streams, 2-way conversations with folks. on aspects of the role specific to Secretary of State, and on some of the policy ideas. And I mentioned the distinction in that because all the other policy ideas virtually were, the candidates are real similar in terms of what we've been talking about, but those key distinguishing factors I think are really important, especially for Southern Oregonians. And with that, let me wrap it up and just open it up to questions. If folks have questions, I'd love to answer them. And also, Libby, seeing you, say hi to Paco for me. Moshi misses him.
Well, we did get one question here. Do you believe it is a violation of a legislator's oath to the Constitution of Oregon to flee the state in order to make it impossible to hold Senate sessions?
I will preface my answer by saying, keep in mind that Democrats have done this in the past as well. So the role, it's the job of the legislators is to do their job, and they're required to do that. This is not something that the Secretary of State would step in to do. It's the governor, and she actually engaged the state police in trying to bring people back. That is their job. They've taken that oath of office, and it's their obligation to fulfill that role. So in that regard, yes, it is their constitutional duty because they've taken an oath of office. But the process of how you do that is something that actually involved the governor's office, and not the Secretary of State. But let me actually use that as a jumping off point to say a couple of things about the Secretary of State's role. One with regard to elections. I talk about both election security and integrity. Election security is obviously things like making sure our systems are safe, and Oregon is better than most, but we still have improvements and processes we can implement. And then in terms of election integrity, it's making sure we get better voter turnout, and we've got a lot of strategies for that I have available on my website. The other thing with audits is that government accountability piece is critically important. And so I've been talking about everything from not just financial audits, but also performance audits, and that includes equity audits and sustainability audits and information security audits, and all those different pieces that help to ensure that government is accountable to all Oregonians.
Okay, I have a question because I've recently participated. There's a petition out there regarding what to do with drug money, and the interesting thing is during this COVID crisis, you don't go door to door to collect signatures. So, and I've seen other petitions come by specifically related to the Republican senators fleeing the state to, how are we going to get signatures? What the drug one did is everybody can download their own petition, hand sign it, and mail it back in. So you've got one signature per petition. Do you see any, if you were Secretary of State, any movement on having electronic signatures rather than having, as they call it, the wet signature?
Yeah, so this is something the legislature discussed. It would be a legislative act, but I actually think we should be making it, we should be engaging and making it a bit easier for folks to express their opinion and to be able to sign on to ballot measures. There's actually a lot of things we should do, ideas around ballot measures that I have, and I'd be happy to discuss those in more detail, but specifically to this one, I think there should be a verification step because you don't want someone to be able to hack and just, have a flood of things come through. But it's just like when you sign, when we use our credit cards online, there's a verification process that we have to go through. I think something along those lines, we need to make sure we can secure it. We need to verify you're registered as a voter. And we're in the process now, the Secretary of State's office is in the process of getting new software to update that software in terms of capturing and logging and the database essentially for voters. But I think we can incorporate something like that into our database. There does need to be that check system because you want to be able to verify that it's actually you doing it. But at the same time, not everyone has a printer. Not everyone, we don't want to make too many barriers for folks engaging in our democratic process. And so I think those are the kind of things that we need to engage in a statewide conversation. Getting people's feedback, hearing about concerns, making sure the concerns are addressed. And then and I'm seeing some things pop up, and I apologize. I'm actually calling you on my phone, so I don't have my laptop open, so I'm not able to see all the questions. So Dorothy, I'll defer to you in terms of the questions. But I think we should have a verification process, but we should also be enabling people to engage more in the information age. Now, that also ties into the fact that we need to make sure people have broadband access. This is a huge issue right now with distance learning. And, so like I said, I serve on the Jefferson County Education Service District Board, and we've got parts of Jefferson County where folks only have dial-up. They don't have broadband, especially on the Warm Springs Reservation. There's areas where people don't have that access. So that's part of making government more accountable and accessible, is also making sure that infrastructure is in place so people can engage more in government.
Okay. Here's another question from Vanessa. What is your top 3 priorities from day one when you win?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the top 3 is really, it's all about right now protecting our democracy and defending our democracy. So the first part is elections. So it's election security and integrity, making sure that that's a sound process that people trust, and bringing more voices forward, because we know that there are a lot of demographics that are not weighing in right now, and some voices are not being heard. The second is the accountable government piece. That's all about making sure government is responsive. And accountable government means different things to different folks. I mean, I've had plenty of folks, and sometimes we feel this way in Central Oregon, I know in Southern Oregon as well, where government isn't necessarily accountable to different regions. So let's make sure it's accountable to rural areas as well. And also different communities of color. There's often issues that come up, tribal communities. And so that accountable government piece means a broader sense. So there's that transparency, there's that providing information, identifying when government's not, when the state agencies are not doing their role to provide resources and to help folks out, and also making sure that folks aren't being left behind. So that accountable government piece is that. It's really through that audit process. The other is safeguarding our natural resources. I mean, that's our heritage. And so making sure that we're looking at we've got some heritage resources. We also have some resources that we're able to use and harvest. There's also, but that's something that we need to be able to do it at a rate, not just that's good for Oregonians now, but into the future as well. And actually, I learned a lot from Libby and Ted sitting around their kitchen table, and they were talking about how their family has managed harvested their family forest over time. That has been a sustainable practice. And that sense of sustainability is really key. So when I talk about sustainability, it's environmental sustainability, it's also economic sustainability. And so those 3 have been kind of the key things I've talked about all along, but now I'm going to cheat and add a 4th thing to it. And that is coming out currently now and post COVID-19, rebuilding our economic engine, our local, our business infrastructure is critically important, especially in rural communities. And so really focusing on partnering with small businesses and helping startups, helping provide those resources so people can, that economic engine can kick back in. Now, and actually just did a live stream on this at noon today. I'm doing kind of hot topics Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and talking about the corporations division. So the corporations division is about helping people register their businesses and getting started. And then it's working in partnership with other agencies, both nonprofit and government agencies, that help to support small businesses, and all businesses really, but especially small businesses, because small businesses are, I think they're like 9 out of 10 businesses in Oregon, and also employ over half of Oregonians. So that is another key piece that comes in. And then just one other thing I want to say on that in terms of background experience, that again kind of distinguishes me in this race, is that background experience managing through times of crisis. And that's something, everything from my time in Kosovo to also the training I had in the National Incident Management training and drilling. You bring that experience into the role as crises come up, so you're able to adapt and respond in real time. On our website, JamieForOregon.com, we actually have a COVID-19 link where we're linking people to other resources, everything from physical and mental health to economic support as well. I'm trying to make sure people have access to the resources they need.
Okay. Briefly, what is your process in reviewing an initiative? At times it seems partisan, especially over the past 4 years.
Yeah, this has been a huge issue. So the ballot initiative process is something that is part of the proudly independent nature of Oregonians. So it's an important part of how we consider potential new laws. The process I would put in place is first do an internal review within the office. I think some of the things that have been missing, if there's questions coming up or there's legal concerns, I would go to the state's attorney, the attorney general, and not to some, hand-picked private lawyer to come up with a kind of a chosen and selected opinion on that. So I work with our attorney general. I'd also actually ask her to establish a title on a ballot measure ahead of time. So I would do the initial review. If I saw some major problems with it, something that would block me from supporting it going forward, I'd have that conversation with whoever submitted it ahead of time before they went out to signatures. And actually, I'd review that first, the Attorney General. But if it looked like it was something that was a sound initiative, I'd ask the Attorney General to establish a title for that so that when people were signing on, so back to your questions about ballot signatures, when people were signing on, they knew what they were signing on to. And the folks who brought it forward, they already had a sense of whether or not they needed to make modifications before signatures were gathered. Because if you just go out and gather signatures and then you come back and then you're told, no, I'm not going to support it, you need to tweak it, well, you'd have to go back out and recollect signatures. That's not really a fair process. So I think that process piece is really important. So that initial review, initial discussion and conversation, if there's any issues, identify them, let someone cure them if they wanted to, and to look at something that could go forward. But we also, it's not just a fair game. Anyone can there are standards though that have to be met in terms of something that would come forward. And so I would also apply those rigorous standards in terms of a review process. I think that's where my legal background and training is helpful, but our attorney general is the state's attorney. So I would defer to her on legal matters and have those conversations.
Okay. The number of non-affiliated voters is growing by leaps and bounds. How can we change the voter registration process so the voters can register in a party at the same time they register to vote at DMV, for example?
Yeah. So a couple ideas on this. It's absolutely crucial that we let people know what the process is and we simplify the process as much as possible. But other things I've talked about are things like same-day registration. The only pushback I've heard on that is actually at Wasco County. And I remember back in the 80s when I was high school with the issue with Rajneeshis, and there was people are concerned about that. So I think we've got to talk that one through. But I think we should go with same-day registration. I think postmarks, ballot postmarks should count. Because right now, of course, you have to mail, when you mail in your ballot, it has to be received by Election Day. So those are some of the changes. I actually also think we should be dropping the voting age, and I advocate for that, but that would be a constitutional change. So all of these different pieces are things that we could go into improving the process. But specific to your question, if we went to same-day registration, and we got to get rid of these deadlines because they become barriers to people engaging in the process. And then letting people know that in a closed primary, you got to register for a party if you want to help select that party's nominee. Just a point, if folks aren't, as of today, actually yesterday was the deadline to change party registration, but even if you're not registered as a Democrat, you can still vote as the independent party is also, they've got their own process. You have to go to their website. But they are also going through a nomination process. I'm actually on their ballot. We're the only campaign that actually got on there by signature and not by paying to get on. But we're trying to get that dual endorsement. But so if we change to same day, that will help address that issue. But then also informing people so they know. One other thing I think we should be looking at in terms of voting is capturing voter preference or voter intent. And there's two great ideas out there, both ranked choice and star voting. What I would do, and I've started this process, I had a live stream on it last week, is engage Oregonians in a conversation so that people could see what those two options were, and then decide which is the preferred. Benton County is actually going to try ranked choice voting this time. The Independent Party of Oregon is going with star voting, so people could get a sense of the different types. but reviewing it, letting people know what the process was, and then engaging people and then figure out what people preferred. And I would advocate for that type of vote. One other thing about making voting more accessible. This is a great idea I got from talking to the Deschutes County clerk. I've been talking to county clerks in both urban and rural areas to also kind of ground truth my ideas. So I'm not just throwing ideas out in the wind, but it's like, okay, how would we implement that? And again, that's that actual experience having to implement things ties in there. But she was talking about having kiosks where you would go like in the DMV or some of these other places where they would have all the information in the kiosk. And that would make it easier for folks to register to vote. Well, that's a great idea because also you could have that in many different languages. And then all that, you wouldn't, the people who are at the front desk of whatever the state agency was would not have to be experts in helping people to register to vote. So I'd love us to get those kiosks and then have them actually in all government offices. So people could just walk up and register to vote or change their registration. There's, go through the eligibility process, but also have information on voting. But we could also then provide information on things like small business and corporations and tying people in to access so that it's almost like going up to an ATM. Nowadays, if you want to buy stamps, you can buy it from some ATMs. That kind of thinking of how do we engage in the technology that we have or utilize technology, maybe having grocery stores so people can go up and just have it, make it really easy and really accessible. There'd be costs involved with that machinery unless we could partner with other organizations on kind of dual use. But those are some of the ideas that I want to explore to make it more accessible to folks and really bring government out to people. One of my things I talked about was maybe just being in Salem 3 days a week and then spending 2 days. And you all know I've got a camper, I'm ready to go. But then just having like a field office in different parts of the state. So very literally being physically present all around the state. So it's government coming to Oregonians and not being a matter of, you got to drive up to Salem if you want any kind of audience with your Secretary of State.
Just to let you know, we did lose one of our participants, and they left with the note that you've got their vote.
Oh, nice.
So,
I appreciate that.
okay. This may go along with a lot of things that you're saying, but what do you feel about open primaries? Do you think we should go to something like that or stick with the closed?
So here's my thing on that is that the idea that we need to engage more voters and make voting more accessible and also bring potentially folks who are not part of the Democratic Party on board. I think that's important. We need to find a way to engage people and bring people forward. The thing about opening primaries, and of course it's up to the parties themselves, and we've had now 2 different cycles of a vote in the Democratic Party of Oregon, and both times it's been voted down. It's actually been fairly close, but it has been voted down both times. And there is this push and pull internally. So we've got a lot of voters, almost 40% statewide, who are not registered with either party. Now, some folks, sometimes it's a lack of knowledge about the process. Other times it's a frustration with the party. So I think that's part of that thing of our party being more accountable. And Democrats, and you all know this, is making sure that the Democratic Party is seen as not just a party for urban folks, but really for all Oregonians. I think we need there's work to be done there. But I do think I am concerned, or I do think there's a problem with just opening up primaries, because then this is especially potentially an issue in rural areas, is that you could see some of those core values and what I would call progressive, but really different values that are core to the Democratic Party. We could have a nominee who does not support some of those core values. And that's a concern that I have. And so I think there are some core things that define us as Democrats. And I think it's important to have a nominee who carries those values forward. So in this conversation, I mean, obviously it's up to the party ultimately. I fall on the side of thinking it's probably better not to open primaries. And if a party does move forward with it, then I think both parties should. But I do think that we need to try to find other ways to engage voters who are not registered with either party. One, to make sure they know the process and give them those opportunities to sign up and become a Democrat, even temporarily for a primary. And then also make sure they know the process and make sure that the Democratic Party is being more responsive to all Oregonians. I mean, this is why we were so successful in 2018, because we were showing up and listening and talking about the issues that people care about. To me, that's what it is to be a Democrat. And I say I'm not a Democrat because I dislike Republicans. I'm a Democrat because our ideas are better. But we got to get out there and we got to show our ideas and show our values. And, there are super progressive folks all over our state who aren't necessarily registered as Democrats. And part of the job is to show that's the face of being a Democrat and winning people over. So that's my take.
Okay. Well, we are past, it's at 8:12, and we did have this going to 8 o'clock. The questions are beginning to dry up a little bit. Does anybody want to ask a question? They can unmute themselves. I would just like to say this. Both candidates that were here today mentioned the internet, which is a big issue for me. I mean, 2 hours before this was starting, we had a great scramble because my internet was down. My internet comes as a dish and a tree that cost me $560 to put in. Nobody in a big city pays that to have to have the access to the internet. So this is really a big thing that has to be done. And with this pandemic, okay, I've gotten off my soapbox. One other thing to point out regarding the NAVs, I see Jerry has come back online, and she spearheaded our effort. How many postcards did we send out, Jerry?
I think we were right around 6,800. A lot.
To education to NAVs.
Yeah.
And I think we did get, as soon as there's an update of the van, I'm going to try to do some statistics, because I took a copy of the van before we started this, and now a copy after, and we'll see if we had a greater increase in Democrats.
And for those that are watching and listening, the van is the database of voter information that we use to be able to tell who's registered as what and whatnot. So a lot of people might not know what the van is.
Right. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Let me just say sorry,
Oops.
Go ahead, Brian.
Hi. I just wanted to say this is the third Zoom or Facebook thing I've seen with you on it today. You're just the Energizer Bunny. And the one was just, you really showed encyclopedic knowledge of the Secretary of State's job. And appreciate your knowledge of what you're running for.
Well, thank you so much. It's preparing yourself and making sure you can do the job and serve well and serve all Oregonians, and making sure that serving all Oregonians is really near and dear to my heart. And you all know, I'm not afraid of work. I'm not afraid of traveling. Back in 2018, it was over 45,000 miles just to get out and connect with folks and listen to folks and make sure that government is being responsible and is being accountable. And the exciting thing about this job is that I get to do that for the whole state. And so it's a really fun role. Let me make two things. One is a heartfelt thank you to you all for the support you've shown. It's really been a powerful statement, and you guys came on early, so I really appreciate that. Also, just to say is, now that ballots are going out, if you do have, congratulations on all of those, and thank you for the work you're doing to get out information to NAVs and to others as well. It's such important work, and this will carry through the general. I hope we can do this work together on through the general, because I love working with you guys and really appreciate the help. I will ask if you have any additional time and energy. We're doing phone banking, we're doing texting, and really trying to connect with folks, remind them, get them to turn their ballots early, and then make that last the GOTV plug. A voice from folks who know me to call in, especially to other areas, and say, no, this is someone who understands rural issues, who understands issues throughout the state, and can do the role really well, would be a really powerful statement. So we've got information on jamiefororegon.com. And thanks for all that you have done. Oh, also LTE's, letters to the editor, either locally or even in statewide papers saying, hey, this is why we're supporting her, would be really powerful right now. So if you're able to do that, I'd really appreciate it.
Unfortunately, we